good morning, everyone. This is your Monday Morning Word with Evangelist Karen. Today we are talking about steps to building my ministry, the church that I'm a part of. We are now beginning in the process of rebuilding, and we're talking about this particular subject. As most of you know, we finished up Job, amen, and now we are into our theme for the year, which is rebuilding and refocusing, amen. So, first chapter 1 and chapter 2. Let me tell y'all before I get in there about my books really quick. Go to Amazon.com, buy my book, The Power of a Voice. It is on Amazon today. You can order it. It is discovering. It will show you how to discover your voice. And my two latest books, Uncovering the Face of an Enemy, because you know there is always an enemy behind some things that want to stop you from progressing in the things of God, and Build Me an Altar, which is a workbook to building a great altar team. Now that that is out the way, let us get to the word today. We are going to talk about the steps to rebuilding. Pastor Susan did an awesome job. Y'all, we got some awesome ministers over at Consuming Fire Ministries. The Lord and the fire of God is there. Let me tell you, God is moving in that place like never before. And so Pastor Susan started us off with chapter 1 and 2. And of course, Apostle came in and he just made a home run out of the whole message. So I'm going to try to give it to you all as quickly as I can and stay on track and let God do what he needs to do. I wanted to share with you all on today steps to rebuilding. And so we are in the book of Nehemiah. And the first thing I want you to understand is Nehemiah was building the ruins of Jerusalem. So anytime you get ready to build something, you got to understand that there's going to be opposition when you get ready to build. So here is Nehemiah in chapter 1, and he's going before the king. Nehemiah is the cupbearer. We found out on yesterday that a cupbearer does more than just drink wine for the king. My God, you got to go back. You're going to have to research what that cupbearer position is, because it's way more than what we are being taught that it is. Amen. He was a cupbearer for the king, and whenever he went into the king's presence, you're not supposed to be sad. You're not supposed to be, your countenance should not be low. But here is Nehemiah, and he's going before the king, and the king notices that he is not happy. His countenance is changed. When you understand the pertinence of that, you got to understand that going in the presence of the king with a dejected countenance, with a low or a sad countenance, it would get you would get killed for that. And so here Nehemiah is, and Nehemiah is sad, and the king asks Nehemiah, what's going on with you? Because the king understood, and let me tell y'all something, he wasn't for God. He was not for God. He was not for God, but he understood Nehemiah. So when you get ready to build, the first thing you got to do is cultivate the right relationships. Nehemiah and the king had such a good relationship that Nehemiah didn't even have to open his mouth. His very face, his very countenance caused the king alarm. My God, how many of you have people in your court, their very countenance just tells you that something is wrong? My God, not just sad. He said it's not this kind of sad. It's a sadness of the heart. So the king and Nehemiah had a relationship to where that the king understood that there is something wrong with Nehemiah. He didn't open his mouth. He just looked a certain way. See, when you have the right relationship, when you have cultivated the right relationship, you don't have to say much at all. My God, you ain't got to say much. You ain't got to talk much. All you got to do is have a look, and that thing or that individual who is in the relationship with you, then they will begin to understand what it is that's going on with you. And so the king asked Nehemiah, he said, what is wrong? This is not your normal. My God, some people are around you and it's not their normal. They're in your court. They're serving you. They're covering you. They are with you, and it is not their normal countenance. Do not just pass them by. Stop and take the time to find out who's in your court. That's number one. You got to know who's in your court. You got to know who God has placed on the side of you. It is very important that you begin to understand who is in your court, because if you don't know who's in your court, then you're going to understand that there may be somebody in there that's trying to kill you. There may be somebody in there that's trying to stop what you're trying to build. There may be somebody in there who is trying to do something that takes you off the course of what it is that God is telling you to do. So when you're getting ready to build, you got to know who's in your court. The king understood Nehemiah. He understood that this is not his regular behavior. And he asked him, he said, what is wrong with you, Nehemiah? And Nehemiah told him, my ancestors, where they are buried, it lies in ruins. And so now, why shouldn't I be sad? Because my ancestors, hey, Messiah, it is in ruins. Some of you are trying to figure out what is going on in your family. There are some things that have been ruined, Messiah, in your bloodline. There are some things that have been ruined. And God is saying it is time to rebuild. It's time to rebuild, my God. So the first thing in building, you got to understand and cultivate the right relationship. You got to know who's in your court. My God, know who's in your court. So now Nehemiah, he tells the king what's wrong. And now the king, to make this story a little bit shorter, because it's a long book, but if you can just follow us on Sundays, then you at Consuming Fire Ministries International, I'm telling you, you will be so enlightened about the building process as the ministers go forth. But the second thing I want you to understand in steps to building is you got to have favor with the king. My God, you have to have favor with the king. In order to build, you got to have favor with the king. My God, Nehemiah had favor with the king. Nehemiah had so much favor that he was in bondage, my God, and the king gave him permission to go back and rebuild where they tore up. My God, that king is the one who tore up Jerusalem. They're the ones who tore Jerusalem down, and now Nehemiah is serving under him. My God, Apostle taught this. I'm going to tell y'all, I jumped out my seat. They were in bondage. He was under the king that actually destroyed the ruined Jerusalem in the first place. And he gave him permission to go back and rebuild. Not only did he give him permission to go back and rebuild, but he gave him the materials that he needed. See, favor with the king will get you the supplies. It will get you everything that you need to rebuild. My God, what are you building? You got to have favor with the king in order to build. He has so much favor with that king. The king not only gave him favor to go and do it, but he gave him the resources. He gave him the material. He gave him the people. Some of y'all are trying to build ministries. Some of y'all are trying to build churches, and you don't have favor with the king. That's why it's not doing what it's supposed to do. That's why you're not building the way that you're supposed to build, because you don't have favor with the king. And you don't have favor with the king because you don't understand having right relationship with God. My God, Nehemiah's favor became to the king because he had a favor or relationship with the King of Kings. My God, he honored the king, but he knew that the King of Kings was the one who was going to turn the heart of the king so that he can get and do what it is that he needed to do to build. My God, number one, you got to cultivate the right relationships in order to build. Number two, you got to have favor with the king. Favor with the kings get you the resources that you need to build. My God, Nehemiah had favor. That's why he had the resources to build what it is that he wanted to go back and build. My God. And then it says in the word, it says that the king even gave him a letter, my God, for safe travel because of who he was. Nehemiah understood that I am a slave. And Nehemiah understood his position in the court, my God. And so he knew, I know, King, you are giving me favor. You're giving me the resources that I need to build. But now I got to go through enemy territory. My God, when you get ready to build, you got to go through enemy's territory. And it says that the king, he asked the king for a letter for safe passage. You're going to have to go through the enemy's territory. But when you got the seal of immunity on you, my God, the king gave him immunity. He gave him a seal. He gave him a letter. See, that wasn't just any old letter. That letter was to say you can walk through enemy territory and still go and get to the place without harm. My God, God will do some things for you. He gave him a letter and told him, this letter is your protection. My God, he gave him a letter of protection. So not only am I going to give you the resources to build, I'm going to give you the protection you need to go through enemy's territory. See, whenever you get ready to build something, whenever you get ready to do something for God, you got to understand when you are building something for God, when you are doing what God tells you to do, you're going to have to walk through enemy territory. Jesus, my God, today, you got to walk through enemy territory. But that letter was the seal that he needed. That letter was the immunity that he gave him to walk through and not be touched. How many of you got a relationship with God to the point where he gives you immunity to walk through the valley of the shadow of death? He gave him a seal. He gave him a letter. He gave him approval to say, I'm going to let you go build what you need to build, and you get to walk through the enemy's camp without being touched. My Lord, we got a King of Kings. We got a Lord of Lords that will give you a letter, that will give you safe passage to walk through the enemy's territory and build the kingdom like God told you to build it. My God, number one, you got to cultivate the right relationships. You got to know who's in your court. My God, number two, favor with the king gives you the resources that you need to build. Stop looking for regular people. Stop looking for everybody to give you favor. Stop looking for people to help you build. Stop looking for it. It's in the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords has what you need. He has the resources. He has the people. And now he has the protection. He gave him immunity to walk through the enemy's territory to go build. My God, he was protected from the enemy. And the next thing I want you to understand is that Nehemiah, he got to Jerusalem. Once he got to Jerusalem, yes, Apostle Jarvis, I'm telling you today, he said that Nehemiah began to assess the land. My God, he began to assess the damage. See, how are you going to go and build something when you can't even assess the damage? My God, God told me to build a ministry. God told me to build a church. God told me to build a dance ministry. But when you go and you get ready to build, you got to assess the damage that was done. My God, he's calling me to the nations. Well, how you gonna go to the nations if you can't assess the damage in the nation? My God, because you going to try to bring water when they need bread. My God, you got to be able to assess the damage in order to rebuild it. You got to know what is going on in the land. And Nehemiah assessed the land before he even began to build. You got to assess the damage that has been done in order to build the kingdom like God told you to build it. My God, we got to understand that you got to assess the damage. Nehemiah assessed it. And once he assessed it, he told the people, now y'all see what we up against? My God, now you see what we up against? My God, this is the damage that has been done to this city. And now it's time for us to rebuild. He said, come on, it's time to rebuild. And the next thing I want you to understand is this, is if it's just a thought, then there is no threat. My God, if it's just a thought, there is no threat. See, Nehemiah could have stayed in the court of the king. Nehemiah could have sat in his high little position and just said, well, I know it's built, it's damaged. I know Jerusalem is damaged, but I can't do nothing about that. But Nehemiah took it upon himself to say, no, I want to rebuild. He could have sat there in that palace. He could have just thought about doing it and never did it, but he moved on it. If it's just a thought, then there is no threat. The enemy ain't trying to bother you because you're thinking about building a ministry. My God, the enemy ain't trying to bother you because you're thinking about what needs to be done. My God, the enemy only came alive. This is the part where we meet Sanballat and Tobiah. See, you can think about a thing, but till you start working that thing out, my God, that's when the enemy shows up. They didn't mess with Nehemiah. They wasn't thinking about Jerusalem because they had already tore Jerusalem up. They had already damaged everything in Jerusalem. So they weren't even thinking about Jerusalem like that. But it wasn't until somebody stood up and said, I'm going to rebuild the broken places. My God, I'm going to rebuild the ruins. I'm going to rebuild the damaged things. My God, when Nehemiah decided that he was going to build and he started to actually put his hands to the plow. See, some of y'all trying to figure out how to build. You got to put your hands to the plow. My God, he said he put his hands to the plow, and that's when Sanballat and Tobiah began to raise up against Nehemiah. See, people don't start talking until you start building. My God, people don't start talking until you start building, until you actually start doing the work. My God, you got to be able to do the work in order for when you're doing the work, you will know that you are doing the work because Sanballat and Tobiah, right, they will show up. My God. So what am I saying to you all today? There are steps to rebuilding. There are steps to rebuilding. There are steps to building what it is that God has told you to build. And it's not going to be an easy thing. But by God, if you got favor with the King, my God, whatever you build, whatever you tend to rebuild, whatever you set your mind to, whatever you put your hands to, you got to understand that God will begin to work that thing out. You got to cultivate the right relationship. You got to know who is in your court. The next thing, you got to have favor with the King. Favor with the King, it got him the resources that he needed. It got him the people that he needed, and it got him the protection that he needed. My God. And the last thing I wanted to tell you all, it said the next point, it said he gave him a letter of safe travel. He gave him immunity to walk through the enemy's territory. Some of y'all been fought and you don't even understand. All you need is a letter from the King. My God. So that point, he protected him from the enemy. The next thing he did was assess the damage. You got to assess the damage if you're going to rebuild the ruins, my God. And if it's just a thought, then there is no threat. Sanballat and Tobiah only showed up when the hands were put to the plow, when they started to work. You got to work in order to rebuild. I don't want to give away the next part because I'm doing Sunday morning chapter 3 of Nehemiah. Tune in to my live on Sunday morning so you can walk through this thing with us, so you can learn the steps to rebuilding the kingdom, rebuilding your bloodline, rebuilding everything that God told you to rebuild. My God, you got to tune in so that you can begin to understand the process of building, the steps to rebuilding. I love you all with the love of the Lord, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. I hope this blessed you all today. I just thank God for everything that he is doing in the ministry. Sometimes you got to build. Sometimes you got to walk through enemy's territory to build what it is that God told you to build. God bless you all. Share this video, like this video. Just do what it is that God has called you to do. If this video has touched you, like it, share it with everyone. God bless you all. Have a blessed day.